What if you found out that some of heavy metal's loudest legends weren't just wild on stage? They were absolute nightmares once the amps went silent. These rock giants shredded guitars, smashed records, and electrified arenas. But behind the scenes, they were busy ticking off bandmates, fans, and anyone unlucky enough to cross their path. Some hid their darker sides behind charisma. Others didn't even bother pretending. And the stories that follow will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about these icons. So, who were the 25 heavy metal stars who earned a reputation as the biggest jerks in real life? 25. Bruce Dickinson. Bruce Dickinson might be one of heavy metal's greatest voices, but behind the scenes, his attitude could hit harder than any guitar riff. People in the industry often talk about how quick he was to snap at others, especially when things weren't done exactly his way. He carried himself with a strong sense of superiority, and that made him difficult to approach. Even bandmates felt the intensity of his personality because Bruce demanded perfection in almost everything, from performances to creative decisions. When he didn't like an idea, he wouldn't just disagree. He'd tear it down with sharp words that left people stunned. His confidence sometimes crossed into arrogance, and it created tension around him. Fans loved his voice, the power, the stage presence, but the people working with him experienced a completely different side. In real life, Bruce could be strict, stubborn, and unfiltered, turning small disagreements into giant storms that left lasting marks on the people around him. 24. Ronnie James Dio. Ronnie James Dio looked calm on stage with his magical vocals and mythical style, but the real Dio behind closed doors had a fiery streak that took many by surprise. He was known for having high standards, and when others didn't meet them, his anger could show instantly. Crew members described him as someone who didn't hold back when he was annoyed. His voice might have been small in pitch at times, but his temper filled entire rooms. If a sound check went wrong, or if a musician missed a cue, Dio didn't just correct them. He'd unleash a storm of criticism that left people shaken. He cared deeply about his craft, and that passion sometimes turned into stubbornness. He wanted things done only one way, his way. That made him tough to work with, especially for those who were still learning. Behind the legend and the iconic horns gesture stood a man who controlled his environment with intensity, emotion, and zero patience for mistakes. 23. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne may be a metal icon, but living or working around him during his peak years felt like sitting inside a tornado. His unpredictable behavior made him one of the hardest personalities in heavy metal. He acted on impulse, said whatever came to his mind, and never cared who felt hurt in the process. His wild mood swings kept everyone on edge. One moment, he'd be friendly, and the next, he'd explode over something small. Bandmates often talked about how unreliable he could be, missing rehearsals, disappearing without notice, or showing up in no condition to perform. His lack of control created chaos everywhere he went. People tiptoed around him because they didn't know what version of Ozzy they'd face that day. Even major moments in his career were overshadowed by fights, tension, and shockingly rude behavior. He was brilliant on stage, but off stage, Ozzy brought disorder, stress, and emotional pressure that made him one of heavy metal's most difficult figures. 22. Lemmy Kilmister. Lemmy Kilmister was loved by fans, but people who worked closely with him knew how his blunt nature could turn him into one of metal's biggest jerks. He never filtered his words. If he thought something was stupid, he said it. If he disliked a person, he made sure they knew. His honesty was so sharp that it often crossed into cruelty. Crew members described moments where his comments cut deep, leaving people speechless. He didn't sugarcoat anything, and he didn't believe in being polite just to make others comfortable. Lemmy lived by his own rules, and anyone who didn't follow those rules instantly got on his bad side. His temper wasn't explosive, but his cold dismissiveness hit just as hard. Many musicians avoided arguing with him because he had a way of making them feel small with just a few words. On stage, he was a hero, but off stage, his harsh personality could make even simple interactions painfully difficult. 21. Nikki Sixx. Nikki Sixx helped shape heavy metal's wildest era, but his real-life behavior often pushed people away. He thrived on drama and kept long grudges that turned small disagreements into full-blown enemies. Bandmates experienced his manipulative side, where he controlled situations to get what he wanted, even if it hurt someone else. He had a habit of mocking others behind their backs, stirring tension and creating emotional pressure. His temper was short, and his insults came fast. Many crews said working with him meant walking into a storm every day. He loved conflict and wasn't afraid to ignite it, especially if it made him feel powerful. Nikki's ego mixed with his dark personality made him unpredictable and intimidating. If someone challenged him, he made sure they regretted it. His talent was undeniable, but his abrasive, controlling behavior turned him into one of metal's biggest real-life jerks. 20. Vince Neil. Vince Neil carried a dangerous mix of impatience, arrogance, and explosive temper that made him incredibly difficult to work with. He often acted before thinking, snapping at people for minor mistakes, and escalating simple issues into shouting matches. Crew members talked about how he'd lose control backstage, throwing insults or storming off whenever things didn't go his way. He expected special treatment and reacted harshly when he didn't get it. His ego made collaboration almost impossible, especially when he believed he deserved more attention than the rest of the band. Fans saw a fun, energetic performer, but behind the scenes, Vince was known for starting fights, pushing boundaries, and causing chaos. His attitude created tension during tours and recording sessions, leaving everyone around him stressed and worn out. Even those who liked him admitted that his quick temper and dismissive personality made him one of heavy metal's most challenging stars. 19. Tommy Lee. Tommy Lee lived fast, loud, and without limits, and that made him one of metal's most unpredictable personalities. His reckless attitude often turned into outright rude or aggressive behavior. He enjoyed confrontation and rarely held back when insulting people. Even small misunderstandings could turn into major blow-ups because Tommy reacted with emotion instead of logic. Crew members remembered how he'd argue with anyone, from stagehands to security, whenever he felt disrespected. His outbursts created tension during tours, and his constant need for attention led him to act without thinking of consequences. He pushed boundaries with pranks that went too far and jokes that weren't funny to the people involved. While fans saw him as a fun, carefree superstar, those behind the scenes dealt with a man who acted impulsively, dismissed rules, and cared only about what he wanted. His energy filled arenas, but his behavior made him one of heavy metal's most difficult real-life personalities. 18. Dave Navarro. Dave Navarro carried an aura that looked cool on stage, but behind the scenes, many people experienced a much colder version of him. He had a habit of shutting people down with short, sharp comments that made others feel unwelcome. His attitude often came across as distant, dismissive, and emotionally detached. Musicians who tried to collaborate with him said he didn't care about anyone's ideas except his own. When something annoyed him, he didn't argue. He simply acted as if the person didn't matter. That quiet arrogance created invisible walls everywhere he went. Even experienced crew members felt nervous around him because he didn't tolerate mistakes and didn't hesitate to make his irritation obvious. His perfectionism, mixed with a strong ego, created an environment where only his way was acceptable. Fans admired his talent, but people working with him dealt with a man who carried himself as if he were always above the room. Dave's behavior made him one of heavy metal's most difficult personalities, not because of loud anger, but because of cold indifference. 17. Yngwie Malmsteen. Yngwie Malmsteen is known for breathtaking guitar skills, but his real-life reputation is built on a giant ego that often overwhelmed the people around him. He demanded special treatment everywhere he went and expected everyone to acknowledge his greatness. When someone failed to do that, he reacted with explosive arrogance. His temper became famous after multiple incidents where he insulted crew members, belittled musicians, and acted as if rules didn't apply to him. Yngwie believed he was on a different level, and he made sure people felt that difference. He criticized others openly, even when it wasn't necessary, and refused to accept blame for anything. His drive for perfection often turned into loud, angry outbursts when things weren't exactly how he wanted. Many bandmates quit because the atmosphere around him felt suffocating. His music inspired millions, but his ego and aggressive behavior turned him into one of metal's biggest real-life jerks. 16. Sebastian Bach. Sebastian Bach had a voice that shook arenas, but his attitude shook everyone working behind them. He was famous for reacting instantly and aggressively to even the smallest inconvenience. If someone disagreed with him, he snapped. If a fan bothered him at the wrong moment, he lashed out. His emotional reactions were loud, dramatic, and often unpredictable. Bandmates talked about how stressful it was to be around him because his moods changed like a storm. He loved attention and didn't handle criticism well, turning simple comments into shouting matches. His need to dominate every situation made collaboration difficult. Even backstage, where things were supposed to be calm, Sebastian often created scenes that left people uncomfortable. He carried himself like a star who deserved the world, and when people didn't treat him that way, his temper flared instantly. His talent was powerful, but his attitude made him one of the toughest personalities in heavy metal. 15. Paul Stanley. Paul Stanley helped build one of the biggest bands in rock, but his behind-the-scenes personality often pushed people away. He carried himself with a strong sense of authority and expected everyone to follow his direction without question. If someone offered an idea he didn't like, he shut it down immediately. Crew members described him as someone who demanded perfection in everything, even in moments where perfection wasn't realistic. That pressure made working with him exhausting. He also had a habit of talking down to people, especially when he felt they weren't performing at his level. His confidence sometimes crossed into harsh arrogance, making others feel small. Arguments with bandmates were common because Paul wanted control over every detail. Fans adored his presence on stage, but people behind the curtain dealt with a controlling, demanding personality who didn't care how stressed or overwhelmed others felt. His behavior turned him into one of heavy metal's most difficult real-life figures. 14. Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons built his entire image on boldness, but behind that boldness was a personality that many found impossible to deal with. He acted like he was always the smartest and most important person in the room. If someone disagreed, he brushed them off with a smirk or a cutting comment that made them feel unimportant. His obsession with business and money made him treat relationships like transactions. Crew members said he spoke to them as if they were replaceable tools instead of real people. He also had a habit of bragging, making every conversation revolve around himself, his achievements, and his success. When he didn't get his way, he became cold and confrontational. His attitude made collaboration strained because he didn't listen to others and rarely admitted he was wrong. Fans saw a superstar, but people who worked with him saw a man controlled by ego, arrogance, and an unstoppable need to dominate every space he entered. 13. Joey Jordison. Joey Jordison was a powerhouse on the drums, but behind the scenes, His fiery personality created tension everywhere he went. He held himself to extremely high standards, and when others couldn't keep up, he reacted with frustration that quickly turned into anger. Bandmates said Joey often snapped during rehearsals, throwing harsh comments or walking out when something didn't sound right. His intensity made him difficult to approach because people feared triggering one of his sudden outbursts. He didn't hide his irritation, and once he felt disrespected, he wouldn't let the moment go easily. His temper mixed with great pride, creating an atmosphere where only his expectations mattered. Even talented musicians struggled to collaborate with him because he demanded perfection without considering how others felt. His skill was undeniable, but his sharp moods made him one of heavy metal's most challenging figures to work with. 12. Corey Taylor. Corey Taylor built a reputation as one of metal's loudest and most opinionated voices, and that attitude often carried into his personal interactions. He spoke his mind without thinking about how his words might affect others. His interviews became famous not just for honesty, but for brutal comments about other artists, bandmates, or anyone who crossed his path. Crew members described him as easily irritated and quick to judge, especially when things weren't done his way. His confidence sometimes felt like arrogance, and he didn't hesitate to shut people down with a single cutting remark. Corey's energy on stage was powerful, but off stage he often created uncomfortable moments by dismissing ideas, mocking mistakes, or challenging people too aggressively. His strong personality made working with him exciting yet stressful, turning him into one of heavy metal's most unpredictable and confrontational real-life personalities. 11. Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson's dark image wasn't just an act. Many people experienced the same disturbing energy in real life. He had a reputation for controlling, manipulative, and emotionally abusive behavior toward bandmates, partners, and crew members. Manson often created an environment of fear, using intimidation or sudden anger to keep people off balance. His mood swings were extreme, turning simple conversations into moments of tension. He enjoyed pushing limits, even when it hurt others, and he rarely showed concern for how his actions affected the people working for him. Former collaborators described moments where he screamed at them, humiliated them, or punished them for mistakes that weren't their fault. His unpredictable behavior made sets and tours stressful and draining. Fans saw a controversial performer, but those behind the scenes dealt with a man whose dark personality made him one of heavy metal's most difficult and frightening figures. 10. Chris Barnes. Chris Barnes helped shape death metal, but his attitude caused him to clash with nearly everyone around him. He carried a deep sense of superiority, acting as if he were above criticism. When someone corrected him or challenged him, he responded with open hostility. Musicians who tried to collaborate with him described long arguments, harsh insults, and aggressive reactions over tiny disagreements. He didn't compromise, didn't listen, and didn't care how rude he sounded. His interviews became infamous because of his angry tone and dismissive attitude toward other bands. Even fans experienced his cold side when he lashed out on social media or during live shows. His temper created a toxic environment that pushed people away and made working with him exhausting. Chris's legacy in metal is strong, but his real-life personality earned him a reputation as one of the genre's biggest jerks. 9. Kerry King. Kerry King is a legend in thrash metal, but his blunt personality made him extremely hard to deal with. He built a public image on speaking harshly about other bands, and he behaved the same way behind closed doors. If he didn't like something, he said it instantly, without concern for how harsh or insulting his words were. His boldness often crossed into arrogance, making people feel attacked or belittled. Musicians avoided debates with him because he didn't argue. He dominated conversations with cutting remarks that shut others down. Bandmates talked about how demanding he could be, expecting everyone to work at his level without excuses. His attitude created tension on tours and in studios because he rarely accepted mistakes or differences in opinion. Fans admired his confidence, but people who worked with him experienced the sharp, intimidating side that made him one of heavy metal's toughest personalities. 8. Dave Mustaine. Dave Mustaine is one of the most talented minds in metal, but his ego and sharp personality made him a storm everywhere he went. He carried deep grudges, reacted strongly to criticism, and often blamed others for problems instead of looking at himself. Many musicians said Dave could turn a small disagreement into a heated argument within seconds. His blunt tone, mixed with a sense of superiority, created tension in studios, interviews, and backstage settings. He had no hesitation calling out other bands, insulting former bandmates, or making bold claims that rubbed people the wrong way. Working with him meant dealing with sudden mood shifts and long, uncomfortable silences when he felt challenged. His perfectionism pushed bands forward, but his attitude pushed people away. Fans admired his fire, but those behind the scenes experienced a man whose temper, pride, and constant feuds made him one of heavy metal's biggest real-life jerks. 7. James Hetfield. James Hetfield is respected worldwide, but people close to him often dealt with a personality that was difficult, distant, and unpredictable. He carried a lot of emotional weight, and instead of handling conflict calmly, he sometimes shut down or lashed out without warning. Bandmates talked about how he could go from friendly to cold in an instant, creating quiet tension that hung in the air. He struggled with control, wanting things done his way, and becoming irritated when the band didn't follow his lead. His impatience made rehearsals stressful because he reacted strongly to mistakes or delays. Crew members said James often kept people at a distance, making it hard to communicate or collaborate with him. His moods affected everyone around him, especially during tours where the pressure was high. Fans saw strength, but behind the scenes, James's emotional walls and sudden reactions made him challenging to work with. 6. Lars Ulrich. Lars Ulrich is known for his ambition, but that ambition often showed up as stubbornness that frustrated everyone around him. He loved debating, even when no one wanted to argue, and he pushed his opinions with force until people gave up. His need for control made him clash with bandmates, producers, and even fans. Many described him as someone who always needed to be right, no matter the situation. During recording sessions, Lars demanded endless takes, strict changes, and intense focus, creating stressful environments where nobody felt relaxed. His temper flared when things didn't go exactly how he imagined, and he didn't hesitate to call people out loudly and publicly. His attitude during the famous battle against file-sharing platforms showed how confrontational he could be. On stage, he was powerful, but off stage, he was known for sharp remarks, stubborn arguments, and an assertive personality that often crossed the line. 5. Axl Rose. Axl Rose became legendary for his voice, but his personality became legendary for all the wrong reasons. He was famous for showing up extremely late to concerts, leaving thousands of fans waiting for hours because he felt things weren't perfect for him. His short temper led to sudden arguments, walk-offs, and massive backstage fights. Bandmates described how Axl demanded complete control and reacted with anger whenever someone challenged him. He held grudges for years, sometimes decades, refusing to speak to people who upset him even once. His unpredictable behavior caused canceled shows, broken friendships, and constant tension within his band. Crew members said Axl's moods could flip instantly, making everyone tread carefully around him. While fans saw charisma and intensity on stage, those behind the scenes dealt with a man whose emotional volatility made him one of metal's most exhausting and difficult personalities. 4. Glenn Danzig. Glenn Danzig carried a reputation for being rude, dismissive, and almost impossible to approach. His tough image wasn't just for show. He acted like he didn't owe anyone kindness or respect. Musicians who worked with him talked about how he snapped at people for the smallest mistakes, often turning simple conversations into tense confrontations. Glenn refused to compromise, believing his creative vision was above everyone else's. He mocked interviewers, challenged fans, and started fights with other artists, building a long list of enemies across the industry. His ego made collaboration nearly impossible because he didn't listen, didn't negotiate, and didn't accept different opinions. Even backstage workers said he treated them like they were beneath him, speaking in a cold, irritated tone. Glenn's talent made him a legend, but his attitude made him one of heavy metal's most notorious real-life jerks. 3. Vince Neil. Vince Neil lived the wild rock star life to the fullest, but that lifestyle came with a personality that many people found selfish, careless, and difficult. He often acted without thinking about how his choices affected others, whether it was skipping rehearsals, showing up unprepared, or causing conflicts backstage. Bandmates said Vince avoided responsibility and blamed others when things went wrong. When he got irritated, he snapped quickly, turning small issues into heated arguments. His attitude toward fans could also be cold, especially during live shows, where he sometimes rushed through performances or reacted harshly to criticism. Crew members described moments where he ignored instructions, refused to cooperate, or simply walked away during important preparations. His behavior caused tension, stress, and broken relationships throughout his career. Fans loved the energy he brought to the stage, but the people working behind it dealt with a frontman whose reckless actions and inconsistent attitude made him one of heavy metal's hardest personalities to handle. 2. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne may be adored by millions, but the chaos he carried into real life made him extremely difficult to be around. His unpredictable moods, reckless habits, and impulsive decisions created non-stop problems for bandmates and crew members. Ozzy often acted without warning, causing dangerous situations that others had to clean up or control. He pushed people's patience with his lack of focus, sudden emotional swings, and refusal to take responsibility for the trouble he caused. Those close to him talked about how exhausting it was to manage his behavior, especially during tours where he constantly tested boundaries. His wild energy thrilled crowds, but behind the scenes, it created fear, stress, and heavy pressure on everyone around him. While fans saw a lovable, chaotic character, the people who worked with him faced a man whose unpredictable actions and intense lifestyle made him one of heavy metal's most challenging real-life figures. 1. Tommy Lee. Tommy Lee built his image on being wild and carefree, but that same behavior made life extremely difficult for the people close to him. He pushed limits constantly, acting on impulse and treating rules like they didn't apply to him. Crew members talked about how Tommy ignored schedules, walked into rooms demanding special treatment, and reacted dramatically when things didn't go his way. His ego mixed with a playful but chaotic attitude, creating moments where fun quickly turned into frustration for everyone else. Tommy's temper also showed up when he felt disrespected, leading to sudden arguments or confrontations that disrupted entire teams. He lived for attention and didn't always care about how his actions affected the band, the crew, or the people working behind the stage. Fans loved the wild energy he brought to performances, but those in his real-life circle dealt with constant unpredictability, intense mood swings, and a personality that often acted first and thought later. And there you have it. Stories that prove even the loudest legends can have some of the darkest attitudes. Behind the roaring crowds and blistering solos, these heavy metal stars left a trail of drama, chaos, and unforgettable moments that fans still talk about today. But the real question is this: which one shocked you the most? If you want more untold stories, deeper dives, and the kind of behind-the-scenes truths Hollywood wishes you'd ignore, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and stay tuned. You never know whose secrets are coming next. Are you ready for the next twist? Ready for the next twist? Ready for the next twist?